Gemara. Today's daf is daf Gimel Amud Aleph. So we're continuing. It's an amazing Gemara. What we're learning now. The Gemara is telling us what's going to happen in Mitzvah Shem when Habo Mashiach will come. The discussions that the nations of the world are going to have the Bnei Shalom, and they're claiming, why are the Eden more deserving than we are? And and you never forced us into a situation, all that kind of stuff. So finally Hashem said to them, I gave you 7 mitzvahs, and you didn't keep those 7 mitzvahs either. and as the pasuk says, that Hashem released them from the 7 mitzvahs. So the Gemara asks the question, when did you release them from the 7 mitzvahs? So it means that by not observing the mitzvahs, they no longer have the mitzvahs, so chayt and nisker. So the Gemara says no. So let's stop on the top of the page. But what we mean is like to say, and even though they're mekayim the mitzvahs, ein mekabling aleim schar, they will not be rewarded for them. Now, by the way, there's a big machlekes. There's Rabbi Yerucham Perlo wrote this magnum opus on the Rasad Yugon, and in the Muluyim there in the end of Chel Gimel, he has a long discussion whether Bnei Noach, what does the Gemara mean that he's mat to them? Does it mean that he's mat to them completely? They no longer have the 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach, which is the opinion of a couple of Rishonim, or they definitely have the Zayin mitzvahs Bnei Noach, like the Rambam says, and others, but they don't get the full reward. And what kind of reward they get? Our Gemara says right here. So tell you that even though they're mekayim the mitzvahs, ain't mekablim alein schar, they don't get schar. So what are you talking about? The Tan we learn. Rameh said, "Menai shefilo ibu chavmes b'toyda." A guy who learns Torah, you can kohen gadol. He's treated like a kohen gadol. When we say you're learning Torah, doesn't mean learning Torah, because we actually learn in Sanhedrin that a goy is not permitted to learn Torah. In fact, he's committing an avera. We had an argument there, Torah tziva lona Moshe moy rasha, whether they're a ganav because it's our inheritance, or me'oy rasa, that is like married to us and therefore they're committing adultery. But either way, they're not allowed to learn Torah. What he means here is they're learning the Torah behind the 7 mitzvahs b'nei, which they need to know, and they're treated like a kohen gadol, as Tosfos points out. Because the Gemara says in other places in Harius that a mamzeh talmid chacham is greater than a kohen gadol. So therefore, we're saying that a goy learning Torah is equal to a kohen gadol. There's a Rashba that says in Mavakama, it says, what's the kohen gadol to do with it? So the Rashba says the idea of a kohen gadol is the kohen gadol does more mitzvahs than any other yid. So these goyim learning Torah doing more mitzvahs than his compatriots, the other goyim, because he's learning Torah at least of the 7 mitzvahs they're not. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, Adam that it says that a person ha'adam does it, and they will live with it. Doesn't say ha'adam, the person. To teach you, even a goy, ha'adam includes goyim. Now we know that every time it says adam, it means only yidden. And in fact, we say Adam kiyam by oil, and therefore we say there's no law of oil according to one opinion by goyim, because Adam refers only to Eden. So how can the Gemara say here that Adam refers to goyim? So the Tosfos makes a difference. Any time makes a difference between Adam and Ha-Adam. Adam refers only to Eden. Ha-Adam includes goyim. Now that's a bit odd, because you would think hey, the principle hey, the prefix hey is more definitive, not less. So we have all these prokim, ha'isha niknis. Hey is, as Tosfos there explains, hey is very definitive. So how can you tell me that Adam is a yid and ha'adam is a goy? So the explanation is, and one of the Rishonim say is, it's a double limitation. Adam already is limiting yidden, and what's ha'adam? Ha'adam, and we have a rule, ein miyut achamiyut el rabbas. We have 2 restrictions that's actually coming to include. So includes goyim. And I think I told you last time, I can remember that Adam is referring to Yidden because in the Mendel Bayless case, when one of the questions that was posed, and all these people were involved, lawyers, rabbanim, and everything, and one of the questions poses how the Gemara derides goyim, and because it says Adam is only atom kriyim Adam, lo yumas ha'olam kriyim Adam, that only you consider a mention, not the goyim. That's the most pejorative, description you can have. So one of the Rabbanim they volunteered to explain, and he says there are different words or nouns that we use for people. There's enosh, gever, ish, and adam. All of them have it in singular and in plural. The only one that does not have it in plural is adam. One person is an adam, and many people are still called adam. And therefore, the difference between a Yid and Umas Olam is a Yid Mendel Bayless who's here being accused of terrible things, and you have Eden around the world who all came joining in to try to protect him and defend him. So that's because we are one person. We're never plural. We're always singular, regardless how many we are. So Atem Kriyim Adam. Only Eden can be called Adam as singular. Every nation is different. Every nation is separate. And that's why we're called Adam. Anyway, he got a big applause. Elalei Malach, to tell you, they don't get the full reward. They're not commanded and they're doing the mitzvah. So, so they still have, it's simple reading, not like the other shayim. They still have the mitzvah, but they don't get the full reward. The Avodah said, great is one who's commanded, instructed more than someone does on a voluntary basis, as Tesis explains here in Kedushin and other places, because when you're mitzvah v'isa, suddenly Yitzhahara tries to stop you, and therefore it's a much greater challenge. So what do the goyim want from Hashem? They didn't fulfill the Zayin mitzvah, so what are they claiming from Hashem? They're saying the following. They're saying Hashem, Yisrael we're the Eden who kept it. Are they keeping the Torah mitzvahs? Why are you currying their favor? Ani made them. I will testify. I will testify the Eden fulfilled the Torah. It's not fair. You have, you're in a gay bedover. You're their father. It says, you refer to the Eden as your son. So obviously, you can't give Edis. Hashem said to them, you know what? Shamayim va'aretz yidu. Let the heaven and earth testify. Why? Shekayim was a Torah kula. They can be the best witnesses that they fulfill the Torah. Why? Because they watch us and witness everything we're doing. If you remember the Kapitz, it said that when you walk on the cobblestones, one day they'll come and testify, what Aveda you did, and they'll say to you, you're a Russia, what right do you have to walk on us? So they can testify and say the Eden observed the mitzvahs. They also have a vested interest. What do you mean? It says, if you're not going to follow my covenant by day and by night, because there's a mitzvah to learn Torah, if you learn Torah by day and by night, is chukah shemayim va'aretz l'samti. The world would not exist, so they need people learning Torah. So they're going to testify that we're keeping the Torah. Their survival depends on it. Or it says hashishi. Why is there a prefix hey? You should say Yom Shishi, the sixth day, like Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi. Why, when it comes to Sishi, says ha? Melamed comes to teach you shehisna Kodesh Baruch Hu ma'aseh bereishis. Hashem made a deal with His creation. He said, if the Eden follow my Torah, mutter is good. But if not, you're going to revert back to nothing. And therefore, again, the Goyim said the Shemayim and others have a vested interest, and furthermore, from heaven you relate all you put down all your laws, the Torah, and the Eretz, the world is Yod. First of all, was scared, and then the Shekota, and then it calmed down. What do you mean? Why was it gripped with fear, and then what happened? How was it pacified? If it was gripped with fear, lama shakata, why was it pacified? Im shakata lama yura. At first, they were scared. They thought the Eden are not going to do Torah mitzvahs. Well, besides shakata, and when they realized the Eden said nasa v'nishma, they were pleased, they were pacified, and they were happy. Now, Tesis asks a brilliant question. Tesis asks, the very fact, we don't need the edus of Shemayim v'aretz. The very fact that Shemayim v'aretz are existing proves the Eden are keeping the Torah, because the Eden don't keep the Torah, then the Shemayim v'aretz would disappear. So what do you need more than that? We don't need them to physically testify. It's their presence in itself is already ample evidence of our observance of Torah mitzvahs. So Tesis gives a fascinating answer. He gives two answers. The first answer is a little bit hard to understand, but the second answer, Tesis, is a fascinating answer. Tesis says, they don't have to keep the Torah mitzvahs. It's enough that they were mekabel. They were accepted Torah mitzvahs, and that's it. That was the deal. If someone accepts Torah mitzvahs, fine. If they don't, no. Because in fact, look at the Lashon of the Gemara. Mekabelin es terasi. Once we say we accept it, even if we don't fulfill the mitzvahs, it's good enough. Another answer is it depends. You don't need Klal Yisrael to observe Torah mitzvahs, even if one Yid. In fact, it says that's why the Abishah made the world in such a way that there's always day somewhere and always night somewhere, so that there are always people doing mitzvahs around the world, davening and learning and so on. And it's enough for a few people to learn Torah to keep the Eretz and Shemaim going. But we're talking about Klal Yisrael. So as far as Eretz Shemaim, the fact that the present doesn't prove anything, only proves that there's somebody out there learning Torah. But the fact that we need aid is that Klal Yisrael is keeping Torah mitzvahs. So again, so what are we going to answer to the Goyim? So the Abishah says, so you know what the Hashem says? You know what? You Goyim are going to come and testify on behalf of the Yidden Shekaimu es kula, that the Yidden fulfill the Torah. For example, Yava Nimrod can come along and testify that even though that he mandated that you have to worship idols and so on, the Yoid Avram he will testify that Avram refused to listen to his rules, to comply. Yavai Lavan could come and testify. The Yoy Yaakov that Yaakov had so many opportunities to steal. We learned before that Shutfin can make each other promise, even though just by maybe because it's highly suspect that a Shutfin might, feel wronged by his other partner and take a little bit extra, and Yaakov didn't. Lavan himself can testify that Yaakov didn't. Tavai Eishes Potifera, the wife of Potifera, tried to seduce Yosef. The Toyid be Yosef and testify Yosef Aveda didn't do any Aveda whatsoever. The famous question is somebody went over to the Nesivos HaMishpat of Yaakov Melissa, and he says, "How come Yosef said to her, I can't go ahead with this because the Chatasi Lelakim, I would have sinned to Hashem if I would have had relations with you." So the asked of Yaakov Melissa, why does it say the Chatasi? She should have said the Chatanu. She was a married woman. It was forbidden for her just as well as forbidden for him. So why didn't he say the Chatanu? So the Nesivos answered, because it has to do with the famous argument whether there's an Iser or Lifnei Iver. Does a Jew have an Iser or Lifnei Iver for supporting a Goy and doing their Averis? Is there Lifnei Iver between us and the Goy or not? So maybe that Yosef didn't want, felt that there's no lifnei iver, that he is not involved in her aveda. Doesn't have to shoulder any responsibility. His only concern is his aveda. So they told Rabbi Yaakov Melissa that the Zid V'Chover, the first Zid V'Chover Rebbe, gave a different answer, and his answer is that Yosef wanted to keep away from her in such a distance that even, forget about physically doing an Aveda with her, even in putting her in one sentence with him, about talking about an Aveda, he didn't want to have her in that same sentence. So therefore he said, the Chatasi. They didn't want to include her at all. So Yaakov Elisa said an interesting thing. He said, we, the Litvisha, have the Torah, but they, the Chassidim, have the Emes. Anyway, let's continue. Yava Nebuchadnezzar, let Nebuchadnezzar come, the Yoid, and testify. Hanani Mishov Azayah Shleishtachu L'Tzelem. That Hanani Mishov Azayah did not bow down to this statue. Now, interesting. Taisa says, Rabbein Tam says, that why over here it says Tzelem, and by Avram it says Avodah Zarah. Says Hanani Mishov Azayah refused to bow down to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, so they were tossed into the fire, and they walked around. They were saved, and so on. So Taisa says, why it says it's Tzelem? Because it wasn't Avodah Zarah. It was merely a statue. The problem was that it looked like Avodah Zarah. It didn't look right. So they didn't have to be Moiseh Nefesh, and yet they did, to that extent. And what's Taisa's proof? Rabbein Tal's proof is, because the Gemara Ksuva said there, Il Mole Nagdua, if they would have, instead of threatening to kill them, they would have actually beaten them, then they would have bowed down to the Tzelem. And Taisa says, what do you mean? If it's Avodah Zarah, how could they bow down to the Tzelem? You have to be prepared to die for it. What do you mean they would have reluctantly bowed down? So it wasn't really Avodah Zarah. So according to Halacha, there's no reason for them to give up their lives. And that's Pshat Gemara.
By Nimrod, where do we find by Nimrod that he was Avodah Zarah?
No, Avram Avinu's father, the Medrash. No, Avram Avinu, we'll see later in Avodah Zarah as well. But Avram Avinu's father was selling Avodah Zarah. Avram broke them all, and Nimrod then arrested him.
It's off because it's not in the Pasuk. Pasuk just said he was a hunter and a ancient Ishchayil or something.
Yeah, but this is Nimrod threw him into Ur Kasdan. This is what Rashi brings the Chumash.
Okay.
getting back over here. But those Rishonim will hold that it was Mamash Avodah Zarah. So what do they learn? Pshat Il Molin Abdua. So they learn a very important lesson. They said the Gemara is saying something else. The Gemara is teaching we all have challenges. When it comes to the mitzvahs, every person has a challenge. But they want you to know that the Eibush to never give us a Nisayan that he knows that we couldn't meet. We could always, the Nisayan is Hashem gives each individual that Hashem knows that we can overcome them. And a Nisayan that we couldn't, he wouldn't give. Why did Hanan Mishal Vazai not get threatened with Malchus or something else? Because Hashem knew they wouldn't be able to withstand that Nisayan. So they never had it. They only had the Nisayan that they're willing, that they can overcome, that they'll be threatened to be killed. And that they could do. Pain is much worse. And the lesson for that is that any Nisayan we have, we should know that we could overcome it. Nothing is insurmountable. The Eibush would not give us an Nisayan that he knew we couldn't overcome. And so they argue with Rabbi Tam. Anyway, let's continue. Then he says here, Yovid the Yovish, let the Yovish come and testify about Daniel. Shall I bitlos at tefillah? The Yovish said that nobody's allowed to daven. Daniel only to me, and Daniel davened to Hashem. He threw him into the lion's den, and he can testify that. So in other words, you people can testify that the Eden kept the Torah mitzvahs and were prepared to be Moshe Nefesh for it. Yahweh Belder Hashirchi B'Tzofer Anamasi Alif Timani. These are the friends of Iyuv, who we had in more about at the end of the first page. Were all goyim, they were Nevi'im. And Veliob and Barkiel Habuzi, which the Gemara they took out because they said it was actually Yid. The Yidu Behem Yisrael, they can testify. Shekaim is called Terakula. They fulfilled the entire Torah. Shneimar says, and we had this before yesterday, Yitnu Eideyim, let them give their testimony, Vitzatko, and they will find justice in Eden. So therefore, the Eden deserved. Amul is from the Beishlem. They said to no, give us a second chance. The Naasena, and we'll fulfill it. You work hard before Shabbos, you earned the right to enjoy the Shabbos. You didn't work before Shabbos. Why would I give you Elam Haba? What were you going to eat from on Shabbos? You didn't prepare anything, you didn't do anything. El Afa became. Hashem said, you know what? I don't want you to have kindness. Mitzvah Kala, yes, they have an easy mitzvah, the Sukkah Shema, it's called Sukkah. And the Gemara will tell us in a minute why it's called easy. L'chu, go. Go and build yourself a sukkah. Says the Gemara, how can Hashem give them another chance? Rabbi Yeshua Levi said, Hashem says, I instruct you today. You could do mitzvahs only today. Once Mashiach comes, we have no mitzvahs, as Rashi says in a few days now, and we're going to have the end of Nida. That the mitzvahs, if mitzvahs betelis lost love, that later on in life the mitzvahs will be bottled. So how can they give them a mitzvah? Another thing is that today we do the mitzvahs and tomorrow we get the reward. The Abisha does not want that he should have any excuses or demands from the people that they cannot keep. And if you know what, I'm going to give you another chance. Why in the world is sukkah a light mitzvah? Doesn't cost that much money, especially if you hold like most Rishonim, there's no mitzvah to build a sukkah. You can just go into anybody's sukkah and fulfill the mitzvah. Why was the mitzvah of sukkah chosen? So it says in this forum because sukkah is equal to all the mitzvahs in the Torah. But we just learned Rashi in the end of this week's parasha. Already in that Rashi cites 3 other mitzvahs that are equal to all the mitzvahs in the Torah: tzitzis, Shabbos, Avodah Zarah. We have the Kedusha of Lamdal that Phil and Huksha. In fact, I think there are 36 mitzvahs in total that it describes them as equal to all the mitzvahs in the Torah. And yet, why was sukkah chosen? And one of the reasons given is because all the mitzvahs in the Torah are very directed to a certain parts of your body, regardless whatever the mitzvah is. Lulav with your hand, learning Torah with your mind, and maybe your voice. But this is the only mitzvah that's all encompassing. Every single part of your body is involved in this mitzvah because you're sitting inside a sukkah and you're eating, so it's external, internal, and surrounding. So he said, okay, here's one mitzvah that's really a composite of the entire Torah. Let's see if you can do that. Says the Gemara for this. What happened was. Sorry,
Shabbos involves the whole body.
But Shabbos is no mitzvah. What are you doing?
Well, you're not doing your own activities.
Yeah. And I'll do any malachas. Each malacha is a part.
Okay.
Good question. The only other mitzvah that they describe the same thing is mikveh. Is mikveh the same thing? The entire body is submerged, but a woman has a mitzvah of mikveh. Men don't really have a mitzvah of mikveh unless you're a gayer or others about tshuva. And so, and Erev Yom Tov now is only the Rabbanon, But mikvah is the only other mitzvah that's similar. But it doesn't say anywhere that mikvah is equal to the entire Torah. Where are we? So they went and built sukkah on top of the roof. The rooftops were flat. And Hashem then had the sun penetrate through the clouds. It's really, really hot, but Kufas Tammuz. It was in the summer season, and the summer season, goes into Sukkot, and it looks like the first few days it was extremely hot. Each one of them kicked in the sukkah, and they walked out. It says, will tear apart the strings, will get rid of the ropes. So the Gemara says, Makdir, Hashem gave mitzvah sukkah and then made it penetratingly hot. If you just said Hashem does not come up with excuses, tries to make it too difficult for the people. So if he doesn't want to make it too difficult for the people, how in the world did he make it so hot? It's not fair. What did he do? So Gemara says, no, he did. He decided to treat the goyim just like the Eden. We also have hardships. For example, should he so nami? Eden also zimnin. Sometimes the mashchalot kufas tammuz ad chaga. Sometimes the kufas tammuz goes into sukkahs. V'havelet side and have pain. One of the Chiddushei Rebbe says, why doesn't the Gemara say? Why didn't Abishai just make it rain? Instead of doing something which is a bit out of the ordinary to make it really, really hot and all that, just make it rain. And they'll kick in the sukkah. It's a pain in the neck, and the same story. So they want to bring an eye from here that when it rains, you still have to sit in the sukkah on sukkahs like Chabad does and some others do. Most people that didn't obviously is your potter, but you see from the Gemara here they want to say that you should sit in the sukkah. Otherwise, they should just made it rain simple instead of doing something out of the ordinary. Says the Gemara, but I don't understand. You didn't have the same thing. If it's too hot, if you're in pain, if it rains or it's very, very hot, you're potted from sitting in the sukkah. Lama Rabba Mistai potted from the sukkah. Anybody who's in pain is potted from sitting in the sukkah. Says the Gemara, Nihi the potter. You're right. Of course we're potter. But you think when we walk out, we prance out of the sukkah, we're so happy. But uti mimavati, while we kick in the sukkah, we're upset. Nebuchadnezzar now sits there and he's joyous, he's happy, he's laughing. Because the goyim and the argument, the discussion came to an end. It says Hashem sits in heaven and he's very happy. The Eibusha is not very happy, doesn't laugh. The only day the Eibusha really laughed. The master of Rabbi Yitzchak, others say that Rabbi Yitzchak's comment was not on that day when this discussion will take place, but on the following. The time you learn Rabbi Yitzchak, love if will come, was guiding. The goyim will come and say, "Oh, we want to convert and become Jewish." And so the Gemara says, how can you, how can you, that when things are going very well for the Jews, then we believe that anybody who wants to convert and not doing it for altruistic reasons, they're doing it because they think they're economic refugees, and therefore it's not genuine. The time we learned, Mashiach will come, we will not accept any converts. Similarly, people gated, they never accepted converts. Laban made David, Laban made Shlomo, even though as the case that talks about Shlomo took his wives and he made them gadim. Well, we know what happened to them. Elishanasa gadim gurudim. They became gadim on their own. The word gurudim, according to some, means like attached. They attached themselves to the Yidden on their own. So they didn't have, a bezdin, which is ma'akiv, which prevents one from being considered a full-fledged Yid if you don't have a bezdin, Kabbalah, mitzvahs, and all that. But they did it anyway. And what happened was, Menichin Tefillin started putting on tefillin, Beroshay on the heads, Tefillin Bezroy, saying they put on tefillin on the arms, Tzitzis Bebigdayim, Mezuzah Bepischayim. They did all the external stuff. Kivan Shirayim, Milchemes, Gog and Magog, but they haven't changed at all. So when they saw the war of Gog and Magog, what's going on here? They said, what do you mean what's going on? Al Hashem Ba'al Mashiach, we're coming here to wage a war against Hashem and his anointed. It says, Lama going. What are they getting all excited? And the nations are wasting their talk and everything else. And it says over there, they're going to Al Hashem Al Mashiach. The Chol Echad Menatik Mitzvah, they ran away, took off the tefillin and everything else. They went and joined them. It says, they took off the strings and so on. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev u'Mesachek, and the Eibusha then sits there and laughs. It says Yoshev b'Shamayim, which is the next pasuk. Traces brings from Yerushalmi here that the strings and the ropes is the tefillin and the tzitzis. That's what the pasuk is referring to. They took off the tefillin, took off the tzitzis. Hashem generally doesn't laugh only on that day. And Tracy said, but we find other Gemaras where Hashem, for example, smiled and they had the fight of Lezeb and Hyrcanus. And Rabbi Shua says, he says Hashem smiled and he says, so So Taisa said there's a difference between a smile and a laugh. Hashem smiles, but not laughing, because while eating on Golos, Hashem has nothing to laugh about. So when it's not so, it says that the day is made up of 12 hours. And it says you said Abe should never laugh. I have a question. It says the first 3 hours, Hashem Hashem spends time learning Torah. Shni is the second set of 3 hours. Yoshev Vidonos Kola Olam Kula. He judges everybody. The Gemara tomorrow is going to change the version around according to one opinion, but this is how we have it here. And Rashi says this follows the view in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah that he says that Adam Nidan B'chol Yom. According to one view, we get judged on Rosh Hashanah for the whole year. Another view is every single day we get judged. Hashem sits every single day and judges us how much he should meet out, how much he should distribute. As soon as you see the world deserves to be punished, he stands up from his chair. He sits down on the Kisei Rachmim. Trace over here says that some people want to say that we say in Keser, from his place, he goes to Rachmim, is referring to this because Hashem is judging us. So and so on. So Hashem is moving from his original place to deal with the Yidden. Teresa, however, doesn't like it at all, because especially according to the view that it's the other way around, that the first 3 hours judges us, not the second 3 hours. So Teresa says and makes a comment. He says, that's the nusach of davening, and don't give me any shetlach and why we say that. It's interesting because the Chassam Sofer had a teacher called Amnosan Adler and a Pinchas Horowitz, the Baal HaFlo. Amnosan Adler was a student of Magen Mezritch, Pinchas Baal HaFlo was a student of Magen Mezritch, and they asked, and obviously all Chassidim used to daven nusach Sfard. So they asked the Chassam Sofer, which nusach is better? I think it's Chuvah as well. In Orchaim, which nusach is better, Ashkenaz or Sfard? And they were telling him that Sfard, you have all these mekubolim, you have everything is based on Kabbalah, such deep secrets. So some Sefer writes, he says it's not fair. He laments the fact, he says, that all the mekubolim predominantly are all Sfardim. And starting Tzfasta, Rizal, and so on, all Sfardim, and they all daven nusach Sfard. If we in Ashkenaz also had mekubolim, I'm sure we could find also that our davening is based on Kabbalah, because we don't know the secrets behind it. We'll just say that's our nusach and that's how it is. And like Taisa says right here, that's our nusach, and don't read any more into it than what you see overtly. Shlishis, the third one. Yoshev Vizonos Kol Olam Kula, the third set of 3 hours, Hashem sits there and provides food for the whole world. Mekane Re'emim, for these large animals, the Re'em, at Beyakinim, until the species, Rashi says, called Beyakinim. Doesn't mean the eggs of lice, it means there's a species called Beyakinim. The last set of 3 hours, Yoshev Umesachik and Levyasan. Hashem sits there and laughs with the Levyasan. Remember, it says, Levyasan Zayatarto Sachaba, you created it to get enjoyment. So what did he tell me that only that day Hashem was laughing? He sees it every day. Omar Nachman by Yitzchak, Nachman said, Imbri Yosef, with Hashem's creations, Mesachik, Hashem is joyous. About the Albert Yosef, about the fate of creations, Eina Mesachik, there's only that day alone. From the day that Hashem destroyed the Beis Hamikdash and the Eden on Golas, Hashem is no longer laughing. Uminola, and how do you know? We're Dav Gimel Amud Beis in the middle of the page. Uminola, and how do you know? The Lekas Chayk. How do you know that Hashem is not laughing? It says, Vayikra Hashem Lakin Tzvakas Bayemahu. That Hashem called out on that particular day, and he said, that on that day, that was the day when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Hashem said the time for crying and to mourning and so on. Who said it's from that day onwards? Maybe it was just that particular day, but afterwards Hashem was happy again. It says a pasuk, if I ever forget Yerushalayim, forget my right side. My tongue should be attached to my cleft or my palate. If I don't remember you. Now, interesting. David Melech is saying this, but now we're saying the Eibishter is saying, the Hashem is saying this. If I forget Yerushalayim, no, if Hashem forgets Yerushalayim all the time, he's not happy. He says, why not? Why can't you be sad and happy at the same time? By the chuppah, we break the glass. Still a very happy moment. And nevertheless, we also temper it a little bit with breaking glass. We can be happy and sad at the same time. So therefore, what do you mean David says, How do you know the Eibusher is not Mesachim now? For the following pasuk, it says in the pasuk, Hechashesi. He said in the pasuk, I was quiet. Ma'olam achrish is apet. I've always been quiet and I'm holding myself back. Always. So it says always means that Eibusher is not happy. Kozman Eden on Golus. Says Gemara Belevius in the last set of four. In Belevius in the last set of. If you just said that Hashem is no longer happy, so what did he do in the fourth set of hours? You said before that he created the what it was the Leviathan to be happy with. But you're saying Hashem is no longer laughing since the Churban Beis Hamikdash. So what does he do in that set of the last set of 3 hours? Ma'yavit Yoshiv Umelamed Tenoikas Shalbeis Rabban Torah. All those children who passed away young, didn't have a chance to grow up and learn properly, the Eibusher teaches them Torah. Shneimah says, it's me Yoyedei, who's going to give them the knowledge? It's me Yovin Shemua, and who's going to understand all of these statements? Gemule Mecholov, that those babies who are nursing from the milk of their mother, Atikim Meshadayim, and they were removed from the mother's breast. So they can no longer know as they died young, prematurely. And the Eibusher teaches them. So now we're trying to interpret the pasuk. So who does Hashem teach? So the Gemara and before then, and before the Churban Beis Hamikdash, and the Eibusher then was joyous with the Leviathan. So who was teaching these kids who died prematurely? Man have a migla, who taught them? I can tell you Metatron, Malach Metatron, the one who brings all out phyllis to the Kisei covered. He taught them. And the boy say, I can tell you, Hava Ovid. He did both. Saying, well, that's by day. Ubalayla my Ovid, what does he do by night? The boy say, the exact same 12 hours is broken up into 4 parts. The first 3 hours, learning Torah, the second 3 hours judging and so on. The boy say, or we can say, Reichiv al Kruv Kal. He's traveling on this kruv that's very quick. Shaloi v'shot, and he floats through Bishmoina Osir Elef Eilemis. Through 18,000 different worlds. Shenemar, it says, that Hashem rides Ribosaim 2 times 10,000, which is the equivalent of 20,000. Alfei Shinon. And Alfei Shinon means, these angels who are quick. But Tika Shinon She'enon. Alfei is 2,000. She'enon not there. No, it's 2,000, 20,000. Deduct 2,000 leaves 18,000. So these are all spiritual levels. The Ibai say, others say, that Yoshiv v'Shemei Hashem v'Chai. Hashem sits and listens to the songs of the angels. It says Yemam Yitzav Hashem Chazler. By day that Hashem commands His Chesed, but at night Shira Imek. David says Hashem sings with me at night. Because we know that we look more brachas. At night David HaMelech used to sleep like a horse, and then he used to get up midnight and sing all the Shira v'Tish brachas. Amar Rav Levi Kol HaPoisik Medivrei Torah. Anybody interrupts his Torah, and instead it talks about other things. Give him to eat this coal. There's coal that is very, 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 very hot on the inside, even on the outside it doesn't look so hot. So if you give up the Torah and talk divrei sicha, you don't really appreciate what Torah has to offer. Then it says hakoitzim maluach. Those who grab away maluach, so the Ben Chananel says, it's actually Serb Sharash as well. Maluach means from the luchas. Instead of learning from the luchas that you're supposed to, and instead you replace it with talking. So what are this origin of these coals? Lachma will be their food. Anybody wants to at night, Hashem draws down on them a lot of generosity by day. Remember it says, at night, he sings with me. Why by day will Hashem, give all the generosity? Because at night we sang together, we learned. Others say, anyone who learns Torah while we have a chance in this world, this world is like darkness, we don't see Hashem yet. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem will draw down on him chesed in the next world to come. That's compared to day. It says, that by day, Hashem will reveal himself. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, it says in the pasuk, it says in the pasuk that a person is like the fish in the water. When a person like the fish in the water, that you made us like fish in the water, and he says that we crawl, boy, we have nobody's controlling us. Why are you compared to fish? How are we compared to fish? Ma dogim shebiyam, just like fish in the water. Kivin she'oilei abasha. As soon as you take them out of the water, miyad mesim, they'll perish. Av b'nei adam, so too people. Kivin she'poish b'nei. As soon as you take them out of the water, which means b'divrei Torah, because ein mayim ela Torah, u'min hamitzvos miyad mesim. We have nothing to live for if we're dead. Spiritually for sure. Another pshat. Ma dogim shebiyam, like fish in the water. Kivin shekodra aleim chamba. If the sun really burns on them, miyad mesim, they will die. They can't tolerate it. Kach b'nei adam, people. Kivin shekodra aleim chamba. As soon as the sun beats on them, miyad mesim, they will die. What does that mean? So Gemara gives two explanations. Ibayis eimel b'olam hazeh, we're referring to this world. Ibayis eimel b'olam hazeh, the world to come. Ibayis eimel had this world. Rab Chanina, like Rab Chanina said. What did Rab Chanina say? The Amar Rab Chanina. That it means literally Hakol b'dei shemayim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem. Chutz mitzinim pachim. Now there's a machlekes to show him how to learn. We actually had in Ksubas. Tzinim pachim means cold and heat, or tzinim pachim means that cold. In other words, if it's very cold outside, it's very easy for us to dress warmly and we'll be protected. But if we don't dress warmly, we don't fulfill the nishmar, and then it's our fault that we got sick. So not always the people get sick; it's their fault. But if you get the sickness because you didn't take care of yourself, then you are responsible. That's your bechira, that's your choice. When it comes to the heat, it's not so simple because if it's very hot outside, what can you do? You get a heat stroke. What could you have done? You can't. You dress whatever you dress, but that's it. There's nothing else really you can do. So that's why some Rishonim say it's only talking about cold, not about heat. Others have a heat as well. You can build your house in a way that it's cool and do whatever you can to make sure that you're protected. So anymore further, she never said tzinim pachim, cold and heat, bederech ikesh, the person who goes not in a straight way, but if you go and you take care of yourself, you will distance yourself from heat and cold. We're not talking about this world physically, that just like fish get sick from the heat, so do we. But it means in Olam Haba. What does it mean? Of course, there's a Gehenna right now, but Mashiach will come, and they're still Rishayim. They won't be punished with the Gehenna. Instead, Hashem will take out the sun from its shield. It'll become very, very hot. So Rishayim will be punished by that heat. With tzaddikim misrapim, but tzaddikim on the other hand will be cured by that heat. What do you mean Rishayim will be punished by the heat? That day will come. And we're talking about when she will come. Boyer Ketan will be burning. The sun will be burning just like an oven. All those evil people, all the bad people will be like kash, will be like straw. The lat oisam, and they'll be burnt completely by the sun. What do you call it? Hashem says, and he will not leave anything, no remnants behind. Shoydish, not a root, not a branch, will be nothing left. There won't be anything left of them in this world, and nor will there be a branch left in the next world. However, tzaddikim misrapim, by the very same sun can be merapah, will heal the tzaddikim. It says the pasuk, it will shine to you, all those who fear me, shemesh daka, the sun which is charitable, and it will heal you with its light, with its rays. Not only that, they will enjoy it. It says the pasuk, the yatsa upishtam be'eglen marbek. It says that they will go out to pishtam, and it'll be plenty of it. Like what do you call it? Like cows or calves that were fattened up. A third interpretation. We almost finished the Gemara. Just like fish in the water. There's no friendship between different species of fish. Anyone who's larger will consume those who are smaller. And so too people. There's no fear. There's no authority. There's no civilization, and everybody will threaten each other. That's what it means. It says before, there's no Moshe there. Chanina, who was the deputy of Kohen Gadol, said, you should always daven for that the government should continue being able to reign and give authority. It wouldn't be for the fear of the king. Everybody would swallow up their fellow person.
This is in Pirkei Avos, isn't it?
Yes, it's exactly what Pirkei Avos. Exactly right. Third Perek. Okay, have a good walk, everybody.
Good luck.
Good luck. Thank you.
Enjoy the
Well,
new Masechta.